means. But yeah, big shout out to Gata, of course. He is also a 5-time United States chess champion. Yeah, I have the music off. He is also a 5-time champion as well, United States chess champion. So let's read this article. Gata Kamsky. People are mistaken when they say I quit chess. Gata Kamsky has had one of the most extraordinary career paths of any top chess player. Born in Siberia, he moved to the US at 14 and stunned the chess world by breaking into the world top 10 as an untitled 16-year-old. He played a world championship match at the age of 22, but then quit chess not of his own accord, but at the request of his father. As he explains in an interview with tvn.ru, Gata returned only 8 years later, but again rose to the top and blames favoritism of other US players for making his journey more difficult. Okay. Interesting start. All right, let's keep going. All right. Let's keep scrolling. Okay. Gata Kamsky's amazing surge to the very top of the chess world began after he defected from the USSR to live in the USA. He began a long 2-part interview with Artur Khalilov for the Kazan-based tvn.ru by talking about how that move came about at the 1989 New York Open. We've translated highlights of the Russian interview, part 1 and part 2 below. We're now on defecting to the USA. We're now going to return to that ancient history. That's Gata's replaces. We're now going to return to that ancient history. I was 14 years old back then. A kid can't take serious decisions at that age. Everything was decided for me by my dad. He planned that step in advance. In 1988, we played in the junior championship, and my father was planning to meet with representatives of the American Chess Federation in order to get their invitation. Already back then, my father was planning that escape to the West. So amazing start. I mean, nowadays we very rarely think about such things, but it was a much different world back then. Okay, why? In the Soviet Union, there was always a problem of extremely high competition. There were always plenty of phenomenal talents, and despite the fact that I twice won the Russian Junior Championship, I hadn't managed to travel to international events. All the decisions in that area were taken by the State Sports Committee for Chess, which consisted of a narrow group of quote-unquote our people. That left huge power in their hands over everything chess-related in the USSR. They were the ones who decided the fate of chess players. If, for any reason at all, they didn't like you, they could put a complete stop to your talent. Once my father and I traveled to Kishinev for a tournament, but even there, they told us that we couldn't be accepted without the approval of the sports committee. They got in touch with Moscow, who replied, Don't enroll this person. We're protecting his talent. After that, my dad understood that it was going to be tough to fight against if we weren't the favorites of someone or if we weren't in the Kasparov or Botvinnik school. So to give you guys some more background, the Kasparov and the Botvinnik school, those were the preeminent schools in the former Soviet Union. And so a lot of the world champions, a lot of strong players came out of this. Gotham Chess is the story of my childhood. Good one, Levy.
I know it's not that impressive, but it's a big milestone for me.
Good one, Levy. Good one.
Great content.
Okay, so here's a picture of Rustam and Gata Kamsky from the USSR 1980s. It's a picture. We keep going. Okay. Wait. Kasparov's favorite, meanwhile, was... Wait, did I miss something? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, I didn't miss anything. Kasparov's favorite, meanwhile, was always Kramnik. It ended up quite ironic that Kasparov insisted that Kramnik was the one to get the chance to play a world championship match against him and ultimately lost him. And after that, Kramnik's camp didn't offer him a return match. Well, that's also ancient history. When there are laughs in here, I'm going to laugh, by the way, you guys. That's actually, I'm going to say this is actually really funny. And the reason this is so funny, you guys, is because it is true. Like, Kasparov was supposed to play Alexei Shirov in a world championship match, but they ended up, long story short, he ended up playing Kramnik instead of Shirov. Kasparov lost to Kramnik, and then Kramnik did not, of course, play Kasparov again. So it is pretty funny, this part of the story. So let's keep going. All right. Let's return to that escape to the USA. They didn't want to let us go, but we were invited to a tournament in New York. Our federation said back then, why should a small kid travel? Let's send some famous Soviet grandmaster. My dad put up a furious fight. For the sake of that, we even joined the Petersburg Society Dynamo, and we had a good acquaintance there, the lawyer Yuri Sergeyevich Zhakulev. He's still working, now 90 years old. In the end, we somehow managed to reach an agreement that we could travel to the tournament. Afterwards, they told us that we understood perfectly well in the Federation that my dad was desperate to go there and remain. But so that no heads rolled, 3 influential officials all agreed on my trip together so that if someone was punished, they'd have to punish 3 well-known people at the same time. They decided not to mess with my father, however, since he was disruptive. He could bring administrative troubles, complaints somewhere. And by dividing the responsibility for the decision among the 3 of them, those people secured themselves from punishment. And how did the situation go in the USA? First, we met with intermediaries since the American Chess Federation couldn't immediately grasp whether it was worth having dealings with us. In the end, they somehow agreed. As a result, we were put in touch with the FBI. It was well known that Soviet sportsmen were often sent with representatives of the USSR security services. Ultimately, on that last day of the tournament in New York, people from the FBI came into the hall, and the moment my game ended, they took me and my father to our hotel room and cordoned it off. Then they loaded us and our belongings into a van and drove us to the main FBI building in New York. After that, they subjected my father to a long interrogation, which 3 to 4 people took part in. My dad, of course, has a talent for talking and describing events in such a way that people are drawn in. The interrogation lasted 4 to 5 hours. In general, he painted a picture of it all for them in such a way that they gave us political asylum. My father managed to explain that I could bring America the Chess World Championship title. Okay, let's keep going. The USA didn't have its own chess players. Okay, there was no one like there is now. Okay, strange wording, but anyway, let's keep going. At the time, the majority of chess players in America didn't earn anything and played until university for 2 to 3 more years more, after which they switched to another professional activity, while I really could fight for the title of the strongest player on the planet under the US flag. In general, that's how it worked out. When I just arrived, I was rated 2300 and something, and literally a year later in 1990, my rating had climbed to 2650. Such a rise was considered unprecedented, and there's never been something like that in history. 300 points in 1 year. Okay, I mean, I'm not sure. I feel like, speaking of someone who's very big these days in streaming, I feel like XQC has gone from about 600 to 1,050 in under 1 year. So I don't think that's without precedent. I would also add, joking aside, joking aside, you guys, before we get too random, I feel like Anish Giri actually had a very big jump. I think Anish went from something like 2,100 to 2,500 in a very short window as well. So joking aside, I think there are players who have had big jumps. I think Ali Reza also had a huge jump on top of that. So this notion that it's never happened in history seems a little bit revisionist, but anyway, let's keep going. Okay. There's never been something like that in history, 300 points in 1 year. At that moment, I was already 5th to 6th in the world. It's curious that I became a grandmaster after skipping the step of becoming an international master. A year later, I reached the candidate cycle for the World Championship title, and in 1996, I played a title match against Karpov, i.e. 7 years in the USA, I'd gone all the way. Of course, if I stayed in Russia, there wouldn't have been anything like that, so such a step from my father's side turned out to be absolutely justified in a sporting sense. All right, again, I agree with Gata here with most of what he says. It's very true that Gata's rise and the way that he improved was incredible, and that, this is one thing I would say in Russia. This is why there's a common joke that I make on my stream, which is, I play random 2,500 or 2,600 Russian FM. This is a common joke that I make on stream, and it's worth noting that it's not a joke. There are a lot of very strong players in Russia across the board, and many of them get unrecognized or they don't become known because there are favorites and there's just so much competition across the board. So he's definitely right on that in terms of his improvement. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. On deciding to leave the U.S., you lived in the U.S. from 1989 onwards. Do you currently consider yourself an American or a Russian? In fact, I no longer live in America. I left there in 2015, and I've often been asked why I left America. The main reason is that I wasn't helped at all in the U.S. when I was coming up to battles for the very highest titles. Despite the fact that I'd become an American by passport, for the main sponsor and many influential people, I remained a Russian. It's funny that they gave much more support to a Japanese-American, Hikaru Nakamura. Okay, that's interesting. I'll say something in a second, but let's keep going. That's very odd that Gata says that. Considering that my mother is American, considering that I've had relatives in the U.S. For 200 plus years, I think that's a little bit off base for Gata to say that. Certainly, so he's not right when he says that. He also says for many sponsors, or he says it's funny that they gave much more support. Again, Gata is mistaken with the statement that they gave much more support. Most of the support that I had came with the rise of the St. Louis Chess Club and with the rise of the very important benefactors Rex and Jeannie Singfield. So what I would say is that when he talks about support, I myself had very little support, if any support at all, until I was already well over 2,700. So I think God is a little bit off base with the statement. I think he's making an assumption that I was getting support, but I did not get any support until I was already 2,700. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, there's a picture of Gata playing Fabiano. Okay. And that's despite the fact that I'd already lived in the country almost 20 years and taken part not only in the match against Karpov, but been a step away from a second World Championship match when I lost to Topalov. There was exactly zero support. The main sponsors who organized the famous chess club in St. Louis were still waiting for an American finally to appear, despite the fact that I was already a 4-time U.S. champion in the period from 2009 to 2015. Hikaru was given huge support, even when he wasn't a candidate for the World Championship matches, though I was, but they gave me exactly zero support. A Japanese player was considered a bigger American than I was, a Russian. Of course, at the time, the relations between America and Russia fundamentally changed, and that was a big factor. In general, of course, I got sick and offended by that, but I tried to say nothing much. Now that it's all no longer so important, I can say that perhaps I was wrong, or I'm becoming like Bobby, paranoid. Well, I guess where to begin. When he makes a statement and he talks about support, I moved to St. Louis and I was showing up at the club every day and I was trying to do lessons and help broaden the reach of the club at the time. So if he's referring to that support, I mean, that was not support where I was getting paid to say study and try to improve per se. I would also add that Gata is wrong here because there was an event called the Singfield Cup that was organized, and at the start it was 2v2. The first year, Gata was invited, and I was invited, and we played against Levon Aronian and Magnus Carlsen. I really am kind of surprised by this because there have been many occasions when I've spoken about when I've spoken about Gata, and I really do feel that Gata was Gata certainly is someone who, when we look back at the history in American chess, he's a little bit overlooked despite the amazing strength he had and how close he came to playing for a world championship. So I actually am a little bit disappointed to see this because I've always been a big fan of Gata. I feel like he doesn't get the recognition he deserves, and so for him to kind of come after me like this is a little bit surprising because he's not right with his statements here. He says I was given huge support. I mean, the support that I had was I got a monthly stipend to live in St. Louis and basically represent the club. That's the support that I got. So, again, I think it's weird. He also calls me Japanese. I would be the first person to tell Gata that I consider myself American. My mother is American. I've had relatives here in California for the last 200 plus years. So I think Gata is very off base there when he says that, and he tries to say I'm Japanese. So, all right, let's keep going. I played so many years for America, I gave them the chance to win the World Team Championship for the first time in history. After that, they barely gave me any help traveling to Kazan for the candidates tournament. They put together $5,000, which wasn't even enough to hire one of my coaches. I decided enough and stopped playing for the USA. All right, well, I would tell Gata again, same thing. If you look at the chess Olympiad, if Russia wins a gold medal in the Olympiad, I believe every player is given $50,000. And for example, I think when Armenia won the gold medal in the chess Olympics in 2010 or 2008 or 2010 when they won the gold medal, they were given Mercedes Benzes and they were given I think some land, if not houses, by the Armenian government. So what I would say in regards to this, frankly, is that it's America. There was not a lot of money, even for the Olympiads. I would argue the money was very limited. It's gotten better recently, but it has not been great. So it seems to me that Gata is implying that somehow like I was getting support or everybody else was getting support when there just wasn't much support to go around. Frankly, that's just the reality. So I mean, he's just wrong when he says this. He's just wrong. There just wasn't support for anybody really. That's just the reality. Okay, so let's keep going. All right. In the end, Hikaru Nakamura never did reach a world championship match, but a few years later, Wesley So immigrates to St. Louis from the Philippines, and we have the return to his homeland of the Italian-American Fabiano Caruana, who gets support that not even Nakamura saw. As a result of which, Fabiano reaches a world championship match against Magnus, and everywhere in all the newspapers and news, they trumpet that for the first time after Bobby Fischer, an American is playing a match for the World Chess Championship title. Of course, forgetting about my match with Karpov. Any comment is superfluous when such words come from Fabiano himself. Okay, again, I mean, he's not wrong that Wesley emigrated. There certainly was support from St. Louis. Again, it feels to me that he's implying that we're getting incredible support, which is yeah, it's I don't know, it's weird. Okay. Therefore you left the USA. Yes, I thought, why am I living here? I wasn't sure at first, but then I met my second wife who's from Russia, and we decided to try going back to Russia. At the end of 2015, I arrived in Russia, and it ended up being funny. I was born in Siberia, then I moved to St. Petersburg with my father, then from there to America, and then again I returned to Siberia. My wife's from there. In 2017, we again moved to St. Petersburg. It is, after all, close to chess tournaments both in Europe and in Russia, and this year she enrolled in a French university, and we moved there, literally in September. Okay, so this is a picture of Gata with his wife. Let's keep scrolling. Okay. And yeah, there's a picture of Gata Kamsky and his wife, WGM Vera Nabulsina. To be honest, chess is, of course... Or wait, did I miss something? No, I didn't miss anything. To be honest, chess is, of course, a large component of my life, but it's not the main part. I'm not like Bobby Fischer, who said that for him, chess is life. If it had been like that for me, I'd long since have gone mad, as Bobby did. I understand it perfectly, that you can go mad. Every chess player has games which he can't forget, either with horror or with joy. I've had both. For example, when I lost to Topalov in the 7th game in 2009, that match was specially thought up by FIDE, in order to take away my chance of playing for the title against Anand. Okay, this I can't really comment on, because I don't really know the background of that match in 2009 that he played with Veselin, so I can't really say, he's crazy or he's right. I just don't know the background there. And no one could help me since FIDE sympathized with Topalov. Ancient history, let's not focus on. Again, I'm not sure. I don't have the right background. That's a picture. Okay, Gata and Veselin Topalov during their 2009 match in Sofia. Okay, he got me into time trouble, and I first blundered away the win and then the draw. I had a winning position, but I couldn't correctly sense the moment to move a rook or a pawn. I didn't see a difference, but there was one. Since there was a diabolic trap, but I didn't figure it out and blundered. As a result, I lost the game and then the whole match. Topalov then played for the World Championship title against Anand. That was after I'd won the 2007 World Cup, and there we go again. A huge part of it was about politics, but okay. Okay, I don't really understand, the whole politics bit, but it is what it is. Okay, let's keep going. And the second one was when I played the famous candidates matches in Kazan. That was a major event, and the president of Tatarstan, Minikonov, greeted us. In the first round, I got even with Topalov, beating him. And in the second round, I played against Boris Gelfand. All of our classical games were drawn, so we played tie breaks, and in that third game, I unexpectedly beat him with Black and Rapid. After all, all I had to do was make a draw in the fourth game in order to reach the final against Grishuk. The winner of that match would qualify to play a World Championship match against Anand. My coaches back then were Satovsky and our mutual friend Volokitin from Ukraine. I only needed a draw, and that means I needed something more solid. Emil said that I need to play principled chess for a win. He's my friend, but at the same time I understand that he's from Israel, like Gelfand, so it ended up being a delicate situation. And I understand that my friend will have big problems in Israel if he helps me to beat his countryman. I'm sorry, what? Okay, so there are a couple things that I'm going to say here. I'll stop for a second. First thing I'm going to say is, speaking of Emil Satovsky, this notion of playing principled chess has hurt him throughout his career. He's, of course, a very strong grandmaster, very talented player. I'll give you one example of where Emil really messed this up. So, I don't remember which year this was, but Emil Satovsky was playing Vasily Ivanchuk, the very strong, the uber talented Ukrainian grandmaster, incredibly strong player. And they were playing the FIDE World Cup, and Satovsky in the first game beat Ivanchuk with the black pieces. And in the second game, Satovsky had white against Ivanchuk. All he needs is a draw to move on. Satovsky proceeded to play the Austrian attack. He played this very sharp, uber-aggressive line with e5 and h4, just trying to attack and blow Ivanchuk off the board. Of course, Ivanchuk, being the genius that he is, he was able to actually defend and outplay Satovsky, and he beat him with black. So Satovsky, in going for the throat, trying to win at all costs in the second game when he only needed to draw, he lost the game with black, and then he lost in the tiebreaks to Ivanchuk. So when Gata refers to this is just how Emil tends to view the game, and so it's understandable. Saying that he's going to have big problems in Israel, I mean, I think that's a little bit paranoid. I think that's certainly not how the world works these days. But again, Gata grew up in a different time. You know, it was a much different world when he was growing up, so it's understandable that he can think like this. So I'm not really gonna I'm not gonna hold anything against him. When you grow up in that kind of a lifestyle, you have that kind of world, like it's completely different. So you have to of course give him slack when it comes to things like this. Okay.
Cape Drew donated $3. Nice fic by Gata.
Well, I decided to play for a win with e4. I got a sharp ceiling against Boris, who I also have very good relations with. I've known him since childhood. Like Elise and Ivanchuk, we're all natives of Russia. Ultimately, in that game, we got a position where I saw a drawing line, but then I suffered some kind of blackout and forgot about the variation and lost the game. I was really upset, and I couldn't understand why I saw the variation but didn't go for it. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Those are the kind of psychological blackouts that happen to chess players. Naturally, Boria was inspired after such a win. While I couldn't recover mentally, I lost 2 more Blitz games in the match, but still it wasn't as painful as losing to Topalov. On why he quit chess while still a real-world championship contender. Also a tough question. You really could assume that I might have become world champion if not for that pause and so on. But again, for me, chess was never the main thing in life. Back then, it was more important to get an education. I also had a very complicated relationship with my father from early childhood on. He was born immediately after the war, and those were very tough years, with the mentality of people who were born in those times very different from that of subsequent generations. Also true. And I was brought up strictly with the rigid setting of goals. We always had a very complicated relationship, and I disagreed with my father on many things. According to the Tatar tradition that was instilled in me in my childhood, I had no right to speak at all. A son must unquestioningly obey his father, and that created even more problems. Therefore, people are mistaken when they say I quit chess. That was his decision. But to be absolutely honest, I was glad that I wasn't forced to play chess and travel with my father to tournaments. Finally, I got some time for myself. I could go to college and live a normal life. If you're not aware of it, many modern chess players have no education at all, or they're students of the sports PE faculties attached to universities. But let's go back to 1996. Let me scroll down. Okay. In Alista, Karpov had a very strong team. Also, the practice of adjourning games unexpectedly returned to chess. That factor really helped him in the match against me. In one of the games, he saved a very bad position after the resumption of an adjourned game. And in general, when it came to adjourned games, he really tricked us. Originally, we'd agreed that there wouldn't be any adjourned games in our match. Okay, I don't really understand that, but all right, let's keep going. The main problem with them is the possibility of consulting with partners. In your coaching team, consulting with your partners in your coaching team, and you lose the spirit of a contest between two chess players at the chessboard. And later, with the appearance of powerful computers, that problem became even more serious. Very true. In 1996, Kasparov's strong team helped him in the adjourned games. But overall, Anatoly played very well, and his preparation was good. He was much more experienced. Karpov was able to prepare for all my strong sides and nailed all the weak ones. We didn't have any contact with the world, meanwhile, and there was no internet. We didn't even have the option to contact with someone by telephone during the adjourned games, as happened in that series about the chess player Beth Harmon. If you recall, the whole US chess team helped her to win by telephone. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back and talk about Beth Harmon because that's loosely based on Bobby Fischer. I believe there was, whether it was by telegraph or via phone, Bobby Fischer did play a tournament that was held in Cuba, I believe in the early 1960s. So there was a tournament in Cuba where Bobby Fischer was at the Marshall Chess Club in New York City, and I think by phone or telegraph they actually relayed moves to Cuba. So he's right about this, but it is fundamentally based on something that happened in history. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go. But overall, the match ended logically. I covered all the games in my book. I published a 2-volume collection of my best games. In Russia, unfortunately, the book doesn't exist as it was published in English. I hope there will somehow be a translation later. And the decision to quit chess. In actual fact, my father took it on the spur of the moment. After the match, we stayed somewhere in Alista for another week, and my father was always more affected by my wins and losses than I was. For him, it was as if he played himself. That's really not very good since I was forced to live as my father wanted to live. People often ask me as a child, why do you have such a serious expression? But why? But why? Rejoice, 1 second. But why? Rejoice if you realize that in the case of a loss, you'll be very harshly criticized by your father while you're a kid and can't argue with that. I felt absolutely defenseless. Crazy stuff. All right. Oh, by the way, big shout out to a certain someone who's tuned in and watching me read this article. Big shout out. Make sure you get the juice. On his return to chess, literally a year after Alista, my father came to me with the proposal that I return to chess, and of course I said no. He couldn't object since he'd taken the decision about me finishing my career in Alista himself, and I didn't want to play chess when my father was planning to travel with me. But when we went our separate ways and I finished law school, I could calmly return to chess. I decided to play myself without the help of my father, and almost immediately I returned to my level. I qualified for the FIDE. I qualified for the World Cup and got into the World Championship Candidates Tournament, and then I made a plan for myself. If I don't become world champion before 40, I'll quit. Okay. You were close to the crown a second time. Yes, in 2008, I felt ready. I won the World Cup, and back then the rule was that the championship of the tournament would play immediately. The champion of the tournament would immediately have the right to play a match for the World Championship title, but political and behind-the-scenes intrigue got involved, and as a result, it was decided to organize an extra match with Topalov for the right to play against the champion. It's very bad that chess players don't have the right to speak within FIDE. People from the Federation simply decided that it would be more interesting that way, and that nobody needed the sporting element and fair qualification. Okay. On the chance of reconciling with his father. Let's return to the topic of your father. Looking back after all you've been through, your father has nevertheless lived a long time in the USA, and his mentality will have changed. Has he not approached you to say, son, in some things I was wrong. Perhaps he has apologized. Such people don't change with age. On the contrary, he's always looked at life from the point of view of achieving a result no matter what the cost. He and I very rarely talk nowadays, once or twice a year. It's simply impossible for him to say sorry to someone. As for life in the USA, that's actually changed him for the worse. There he feels complete permissiveness. Together with my brother and sister, we tried to make peace with my father, but it's simply useless. Wow. Okay, crazy stuff, crazy. Yeah, I mean, long article. It's about Gata Kamsky. You know, what I would say, but I'm going to watch a video of Gata and I playing a Blitz playoff at Millionaire Chess shortly hereafter, but you know, what I would say about Gata is, you know, I've always had a lot of respect for him. I think he's a little bit misinformed when it comes to the situation here and you know, my progress or things with like the USCF, the United States Chess Federation. So he's a little bit wrong from that regard. Having said that, in general, when people say that he's acting like he's super insane or, you know, salty, you have to understand, you guys, that he grew up in a different world, and so some of these things are a product of the world that he grew up in. So I will cut him some slack. I think you have to be fair and not be biased in regards to some of these things. That being said, he is misinformed. When I look back at my career in chess, you know, I think of two people in particular who I think made a huge difference for me. I think you know, I think I would say Gata Kamsky and Alexander Onishuk. Those are two people that I will always look up to, very much so, because I feel a lot of my improvement, a lot of the things that were going on, you know, playing in countless Olympiads with Gata and Alex. For me, I think they shaped a lot of my view on chess. You know, I learned a lot from being a part of the team with them, and so to me, it's a little bit sad and disappointing to see Gata saying these things about me. But, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. But when he calls me Japanese, I mean, I'm half Japanese. But as I've said before, my mother is American. You know, I've had relatives here in California for the last 200 years. So he's just fundamentally wrong to call me Japanese. I might look Japanese, but I'm half American. I do consider myself American. And so it's disappointing to see Gata saying that. But whatever. Secondly, what I would say also, again, it's a translation, so things can get twisted in translation. You have to take that into account. But, you know, I have nothing but respect for Gata. I will always, you know, remember before we watch this video where Gata and I played, I will always remember, you know, I played this tournament, the New York Masters in New York City. It was a tournament every Tuesday evening, once a week at the Marshall Chess Club. And maybe it was around 2002, 2003 before Gata had come back. And I remember in between the rounds, they were broadcasting the games on the Internet Chess Club. And in between one of the rounds, there was this username was a GM, and the handle, of course, the username was Udav, and that was Gata's username. And I remember at the time, Gata, he wrote this message, and he was like, "You're doing really well in this event. Keep it up. You're playing great." And I didn't actually know right away, but then like the people kind of told me who I was talking to, and it really was an honor. It was truly an honor to talk to Gata, because Gata is he's an amazing guy. He's someone that I looked up to. He did so much for American chess, and just a lot of the experiences. I think where I got, in many ways, it was having people like him, people like Alex Onishuk, people that I could talk to, people that I could plan these Olympiads with, and so it's a little bit sad to see this, but that's it. All right, let's watch this video of Gata. What's this clip?
Well, ratings is not really everything. What is important is if you qualify for the World Championship. Ratings are important if you want to make good money if you're a top player. Then yes, rating is important. Because top 10, they make really good money. And Nakamura is also last year's Grand Slam champion, right? So
I think he means Grand Chess Tour. I didn't win the Grand Slam. If I won the Grand Slam, if I won the Grand Slam of tennis, I'm pretty sure I would be worth significantly more than $45 million. So he's actually wrong when he says Grand Slam, but he meant the Grand Chess Tour. Let's keep going.
So just because he lost one game doesn't mean a thing. I mean, he can beat anybody. If he had support like Corona had, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have even close similar level support. If he had a similar level support like Corona has, he would be like a world champion, but he doesn't. Well,
that's actually very nice of Gata. I mean, like when he talks about me, I mean, I understand his point, but he is right about that. The support from St. Louis, the support that's been going on, it has progressively become more and more. I don't want to get into specifics, but I'll give you an example of one thing. And what I would say is that, so when a player has an ELO ranking of 2,700, okay, someone has an ELO ranking of 2,700. If you, let's say tomorrow I decide, you know what, I want to go play for France. Just an example. Actually, I shouldn't say France, because of course there is someone who might play for France. But let's say tomorrow I decide, you know what, I want to, I want to prove my Swedish heritage. I want to go back to Sweden and play for Sweden. So let's say tomorrow I decide I want to go play for Sweden. In order to switch the federation, I would have to pay 50,000 euros, which is, I don't know what that is these days, but that'd be like $60,000. In order to switch the federation so that I could play for them tomorrow. And to give you an example, when Wesley So switched federations from the Philippines to the US, he actually waited, I think, for 2 years. He did not play international competitions. Wesley actually sat out for a long period of time from international competitions before switching federation, because if you sit out for, I believe, 2 years, you can switch federation and you don't have to pay. So Wesley actually, I believe, did not play in the Chess Olympics or the FIDE World Cup or any other international competitions for 2 years, I believe. No, I am not talking about support or not support, but my point is he sat out for 2 years. Like, Wesley actually sat out, and I believe there was no fee that had to be paid, or if it was pretty small. And to give you an example, I know that when Fabiano switched back from Italy to the US, there was no 2 years waiting time. It was an immediate switch, and that's because there was support for that change, and it was paid by certain people. So when he talks about support, there were different levels of support, and it has gotten more and more. But at any rate, I would say this. So, for example, I am not jealous of Wesley. I actually, Wesley's amazing. I'm a huge fan of Wesley. I'm not jealous of Fabiano either. Many people, like what Gata says here, I could be very jealous of Fabiano if I really wanted to, because, I mean, he got a lot more support than I did. But having said that, I'm not jealous, because again, things happen the way they happen, and everything that you do is built upon the past. So when I look at my career and where I got to, as I said before, I think a large part of it is having these people, like having Gata around, playing Blitz against Gata, talking about various openings with Gata, and so I think a lot of it is built on everything that happens. So with Wesley coming to the US, Fabiano coming to the US, I'm not jealous because I think in many ways it paved a path for that. And even beyond that, what I would say is I think when I look at the American juniors and I look at Jeffrey Zhang primarily because he's the most talented junior in the US right now. He's the number 2 ranked player under, I believe, the age of 20. And when I look at Jeffrey Zhang, what I see someone who, if he had gotten this level maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't think Jeffrey would be playing chess. I think Jeffrey would be okay. He'd be like, I really love chess, but I can't make a living from it. And I'm probably gonna go get a degree, go to college, and do something else. So when I see like Jeffrey, who's amazingly talented, the fact that he's sticking with chess and he's trying to play professionally, I think that really speaks volumes about where chess is going, and I think it's fantastic. The way things are progressing, and so I think it's easy to be jealous or look at what ifs or whatnots, but at the end of the day, I think everything happens for a reason. And for me, like I said, I could be jealous. I could be like, oh man, maybe if I got the sport Fabiano got, maybe I'd be world champion. But again, I feel like things happen for a reason, and it's where you belong where you are. At the end of the day, things kind of work out in a certain way, whether you expect them to work out that way or not. Jeffrey is not going to college; he's playing chess professionally. Mr. Beast will be coming on in about 2 hours, so yeah, and with Gata, like this is the Gata that I know. Like I remember when we were playing the U.S. Championships and we would talk about several of these openings, or playing the Olympiads, and for me, a lot of those memories, they really do take me back to sort of the happiest days of mine in chess. Gata's not coming on, but we're gonna watch this video. This is YouTube?
Oh,
and the Blitz game, we got that going.
So let's get there because I don't even think we have this board up. They caught us off guard. They wanted to be invisible here. And Kamsky's smiling.
And by the way, this is the other thing you see. Like you see Gata laughing. Let me just go back 1 second. Like right here, let me pause in a second. So you see Gata smiling here. I remember this very well. Like Gata's smiling because like we had played a lot of Blitz games on the internet. And this was back before the London opening became popular. I think Gata deserves a lot of credit for the for sort of revolutionizing the London, because he was playing it before anyone else was playing it, and now everyone is playing it. And he's smiling because like we had played a lot of games and we were kind of, I think there were mind games here, we were thinking, what are we doing? And so forth. But I actually played a bad order here, I think, and I somehow got lucky.
Invisible here, and Kamsky's smiling. He's smiling because he has to move as quickly as possible. So the Blitz game.
No, I'm sorry, Robert. I mean, I appreciate your commentary, Mr. Robert Hess, but you're actually wrong. There's a different reason that he's smiling. There's more going on than simply I want to move fast. That's not the reason he's smiling.
Is underway. That was unexpected for us here in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they would wait, and as the board is coming up, we're going to try to collect some moves, but they have just been blitzing out these moves. And there's Mike Klein of chess.com fame in the background there. He's a journalist, so he wants in on all the action. But
this is the big game of Group B because whoever...
No, this is 5-minute chess. This is not 1 minute.
Exactly, and we have finally the position up here, and White has a great position. Hikaru Nakamura has already got himself in quite a deal of trouble. I don't know what just happened here. Looks like they traded on d6.
Wow.
And knight e5. So I was just suggesting the move pawn to e4, but knight e5, bishop d7, he went knight takes d7. So Hikaru is going to have a lot of difficulty on these light squares. After the move knight takes d7, presumably, he did make that move, queen to a4, and White has already seized a strong initiative. The light squares are entirely his, and this is a blitz game. So Hikaru Nakamura does not have time to start calculating variations. He can't get it too low on time. He made the move rook to c8, which is a good move. I would also add this commentary is definitely different because this is a 5-minute chess. So when they talk about not having time, 4 minutes is kind of a lot of time to think. So I mean 4 minutes is not exactly low on time, but whatever. After a simple move like rook to d1 or castle kingside, it's clear that White is already slightly better because of the control of that light square bishop.
Right, slightly better, but probably not that much still, Robert. And Hikaru, we all know is a very, very strong blitz player. He's gone knight f6 here. Still has got to make that.
That was a terrible move.
No, hold on, no. The king is castled
first. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Because knight f6 initially would have blundered the a7 pawn. Yeah. But we have knight f6 after rook d1. And now it looks like Gata is moving very, very quickly. Bishop a6 was...
Oh, this was in 2015, you guys.
Played rook to d8 and... Rook f d8. I can't even catch up.
Maybe
They're
we
not
should
move
just
so
get.
far.
They're moving too quickly for me to even catch up. So this is the current position. The DGT port has caught up.
This
with
was
me.
Millionaire Chess in
Now
Las
it looks
Vegas
like
in
Hikaru
1999.
Nakamura
Yeah,
has
19
gotten-
or no, sorry, Las Vegas Chess in
Solved all the
2015.
problems.
Why did I say
Now
99?
taking
Sorry,
back
this
his
was in
fighter.
2015. Sorry,
Black
sorry,
is doing fine.
sorry. What?
They're moving faster than the DGT.
Sorry, this was 2015. I don't know I don't know what's wrong. I don't know why I just. Why did I just say 1999? I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, yeah.
Now Black
Okay,
is
okay, so yeah.
And in time trouble already, both players are. Of course, it's a blitz game, but no, I really don't like what White has done here. Allowed Black to escape, block that diagonal up. I mean, this is just not looking pretty for Gata Kamsky. He allowed Nakamura way too much play in the center of the board. The bishop on b1 could become a weakness before it becomes a threat. The queen on e2 is smart. He's trying to break with e4, but Hikaru Nakamura lives for positions like this.
Yeah, well, I don't think the position is so tragic for White. I don't think we should.
It's about even. It's about even here.
Of Gata's chances here, but certainly it went wrong given the great opening he had, and it's really all about whether Hikaru Nakamura can get into fifth gear. We've seen it time and time and again in the classical games, but for those of you who have not seen Hikaru play Blitz chess, you are missing out on something quite sensational. Actually, he is a beast at Blitz chess. He's the highest rated 1-minute player of all time on the Internet Chess Club. He's probably the best 5-minute player in the world, along with Magnus Carlsen.
Here come the Pogzo.
And maybe somebody like, well, there are a
Here
few
come the
good Blitz
Pogos.
players, but you can
Oh, by the way,
see
this is
he's
back when I
already
used to
taken
wear
over on
glasses
time,
too. Those are my
and it's
glasses on the
5
table. That was
and
back when I
0.
used to wear
There's
glasses.
no increment, if I remember correctly. There's no delay, no increment. So it
Did I
really is
actually
a
win
case
this game,
of,
I wonder? I
you
thought it
know,
was a
if you
draw,
get
but
no
maybe I
time
won it.
against
I don't
Hikaru,
know.
Forget about it. He has got the quickest hands in the world. I was absolutely.
I did not get LASIK. No,
blown
no, I did not
away.
get LASIK. I just
saw
choose
them
not to wear
play
glasses.
1-minute chess over in St. Louis at the St. Louis Chess Club and Scholastic Center. Never have I ever seen somebody move so quickly. It was astonishing. So I really fear for Gata. He's got to hurry up. He simply cannot spend 5 seconds per move. He's going to get flagged by Hikaru. And he's finally broken in the center. So he's found a move. Pawn to e4. That's a good move there. That's actually an excellent move. If he manages to get that in, suddenly I don't think he's much worse at all. Because he's liberated his position. The bishop comes into play. The rook on e1 comes into play. And the black, black has made a lot of pawn moves there, so you can find a lot of
just
weaknesses.
subscribed.
Bishop
Loving
takes
the
on
chess
e4, knight
content.
into d5.
Ooh, knight d5 is an
This
ugly
good.
move. Why did I
Real
do
chickens
that? I
just
thought I should take on
subscribed.
e4,
Can't
but
White for
Hikaru
sure.
Nakamura.
Now you got rid of this bishop from b1 to I capture on d5, pawn takes d5, and perhaps just throw the move in queen e7 check because you can't block with the rook because your rook on d8 is under attack.
d8,
You
yeah,
like
okay,
king
good.
G8. Perhaps I can make a move like knight d2 because my queen actually can snake around and annoy the black position. So let's keep an eye on that. And it looks
Did I
like
go
he
queen
did
f4
not
here maybe to
go
trade the
for,
queens?
bishop
D5.
d5.
I don't actually remember the
Bishop
moves that I
d1,
played here. Queen
pressure
f4
on
looks like a move I
e6,
would play.
and move, rook
No,
e7,
okay,
Let's see, the rook.
We need a knight.
Yeah, the rook is moving. They're moving way.
Oh wait, no, sorry, my queen was on c6. That was a knight on
Barely
d6. Never
catching up,
mind.
But it's getting very quick. They have no increment, no delay whatsoever. So they have to be making moves as quickly as possible. And White has very smartly doubled up the rooks in the e file. Black has followed suit. This is the
So
last
many
move.
camera angles. Wow,
It
none
looks
too
like
good
White
though. I
might
mean, that's why
try to
streaming
do
is
the
better.
knight
That's why it's better to play chess on the
okay,
on the
it's still
internet.
moving. This is unbelievably yes. The queen came to f4, queen to b2. And it looks like now Black is seizing the initiative. And Hikaru made a move and slapped the clock very quickly. It looks like he's a fan of his position. I think the move bishop to e4 here covers all the squares. You cover the knight on f3. You attack the knight on d5. A trade like this doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, I'm
Instead,
slapping, right?
Gata
Slap
went
it.
for knight takes g5 here. Queen takes g5 was played.
And now bishop e4.
And now bishop e4. But now this is getting very problematic for
Well, no,
White.
if knight f4, rook e3, and I think you
And
just
e5.
about and e5.
And that's
and he-
exactly
he
what's
played
happened.
f5.
They say e5 and I played f5. They were like e5 and I instantly played f5.
I really like Black here. Rook g3, simply queen to h4. You're just gaining space. You're going to go e5 next. With rook g3, he went queen to f6. So instead, he puts his queen closer to his king. Bishop b1 is more or less forced, I think, because the d3 square. e5, I mean, that's the break that Nakamura's been looking for all game. And if he finds e5 after bishop b1, Gata Kamsky is in a whirlwind of trouble because after
this
the
is
e-file
over.
opens, it is
This is over.
absolutely over. Look at
This is
Oh,
over.
maybe I did win this game, really. I assumed it was a draw, but maybe I actually won this.
Black pawns. Bishop b1 played. Knight d5.
Oh, knight d5 was such a bad move. Why did I play knight
rook
d5?
e5. How did
Yeah,
he
no,
do
knight
that?
d5 was
Wow.
such a bad move. I go e5 and I just won the game. What was knight d5? And I realized it, right? I started shaking my head. You see it? I realized. Yeah, I realized as soon as I did it.
What's he doing?
What is he doing? Queen h4, and now a move like queen to e2,
Well, rook
for
f3.
example, looks very good. He went rook f3. He's got no time, so he's trying to move as quickly as possible. It's a
He's gotta
perfectly
hurry
reasonable
up.
move. It looks like the queen d2 was just played after knight f6, and now maybe it's time for knight d7 to allow the
Yeah,
move
knight
to
d7 and
e5,
e5,
but
of course.
knight
I have to
d7,
play knight
so
d7,
rook
e5,
to
right?
Queen G.
No?
Queen
Okay.
g5.
Queen e2, queen.
e5?
What?
e5? Finally?
How did the queen is on e1?
f4? Allez.
Oh, queen h6
And
first.
e4.
Okay, I guess e4 works.
Queen g5.
I must have won this game on time, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can't even keep up with the game. They're going so fast right now. The rook on e3, pawns on h4. I mean, this is
The queen
they're moving too quickly. I mean, I don't even know what to say here.
I guess queen f4
They're
back.
close up to the board.
Also, look at the lack of the coordination of the board. Everything is just off here. It's just off.
These players, the clock 24 seconds.
Queen f4, right?
And
And
No,
knight
knight
d5.
d5? Okay.
The rook on e3 is
Trapped.
lost in this position. g5, queen h5, just moving away.
Wow.
No, this is completely losing. After take on e3, you just
Takes.
take on the pawn on e4. White has nothing. Down material, down a minute on the clock. There's nothing that White can do
Bishop
here.
e2 threatening bishop d1. He found queen
Yeah,
g4.
queen g4 check. There's
Yeah,
a one
important.
last hope for.
This is over.
But king h2 and just queen f4
Completely
check.
over.
Bring a rook to the f file. Rook f8 here. Okay, he's gonna give it.
Oh,
to
did I do a
f5.
tickle?
Rook f8's good. Queen f4.
Yeah.
No, this is over. Tripling
Complete.
on the
Tripling.
f5.
Look at that, beautiful.
Oh, I created triple
This is a
too.
flag. It doesn't matter. Okay,
Absolutely.
he
No,
lost.
it's
on time.
over. That's it.
Yeah, he lost on time. Game over.
Game over.
Nakamura wins with the black pieces.
Oh, by the way, you guys, that's Jeffrey Zhang. I didn't notice. That's Jeffrey Zhang right here in the hoodie. This is Jeffrey Zhang right here. I didn't actually notice that Jeffrey was here in the hoodie. He's just like hiding off to. He's just hiding off to the side. I'd never seen this before. That's really funny. This of course is Mike Klein as well, but that's really funny that Jeffrey's right here. Hi. Who is? I think this is actually Samuel Seven's mother. I don't think that's not Jeffrey's mother. I think that's Samuel Seven, another American junior. He might have been playing on this board right here. I'm not sure, but anyway, yeah, that's Ben Shapiro. What this? This is not Ben Shapiro, but good one. Good one. Anyway, yeah.